Now, friend of the show, marijuana expert, Danko, senior cultivation editor at High Times. Danny, we're getting news about New Jersey. Why don't you walk the audience through that?
Yes, well, obviously the governor at the moment, Christie, who's experiencing record low approval ratings, is opposed to the bill that was passed right as the former governor, Corzine, was leaving. So he's been standing in the way for 7 years of the medical marijuana bill. Now New Jersey is looking into passing a adult use bill basically right after he's gone, which is January of 2018. So, and it looks like either of the front runners that are running for that position are both in support of that as well.
An adult is categorized as someone above the age of 18 or 21 in that state?
It's 21, and so it makes it more difficult for people that are underage to purchase marijuana. Because
let me ask you, you didn't see my interview with Governor Hickenlooper of Colorado, did you?
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't.
Christie's not exactly a flexible guy, but to talk to Governor Hickenlooper is somebody who came around on legalization, who is who was skeptical, not opposed, concerned, and now is something of a convert, I would say. And he wants, they've done a good job. How many governors do you think are like Governor Hickenlooper? They're open-minded, if not supportive.
I think there's a lot of them out there, and I think what they need to do sometimes, as with the case of Hickenlooper, is to actually see it in action and to see that the sky doesn't fall down. Rates of opiate abuse and rates of car accidents and things actually go down in states that legalize.
And they, as someone who's been in dispensaries frequently in Colorado, they have done such an exceptional job, and it's so tightly run. I mean, the example I always give is, I walked into Silver Peak Apothecary in Aspen with a cup of coffee, and they said, please leave your coffee outside, don't bring your coffee in. You can't drink a cup of coffee inside that store because there's cameras, and the state doesn't want anyone confused, anyone on the cameras confused that you're consuming marijuana as opposed to a cup of coffee.
Right, and I think that that's the important thing, is that we're not talking about just willy-nilly legalization. We're talking about regulation, taxation, so that the funds that are generated from legalized cannabis actually go to helping the community.
What has been Christie's hang up with it so far?
It's hard to say. I mean, he's a prohibitionist. He comes from the background, as with Jeff Sessions and many others, that marijuana is bad and good people don't smoke marijuana. And clearly that's not the case. But that's the thing, is that politicians are way far behind the public on this. We have over 60% approval rates for cannabis and under 20% approval rate for Christie. So there you have it.
Vermont, I think a lot of people watching that right now expected that to be the next state, I guess, to legalize, or rather to end cannabis prohibition. And so many people waiting on the governor to sign that bill. Is there a timeline in place for when you think that will actually happen, and why hasn't it happened yet?
Well, we're hoping he signs it by Thursday, meaning tomorrow. He has some concerns about drugged driving, people driving under the influence of marijuana. We're not in favor of people driving while impaired, but at the same time, like I said, in Colorado and Washington, rates of fatal car accidents have gone down since they've legalized cannabis. So we're hoping that regulation, taxation, the ability to keep minors from purchasing marijuana will actually go towards convincing him that it's in the best interest of the state of Vermont.
Danny, how important do you think it's been that even in states where we've seen recreational legalization, that consumption is largely restricted to the home, right, to private areas, and that you basically, unlike with alcohol where you can consume in a restaurant and then get behind a wheel, you basically, I mean, what percentage of marijuana is consumed in private homes right now? It must be 90%.
It's a large percent, and now some of the bills are coming up that allow for social use. So in places like a private club that people have agreed, all the people have agreed that, hey, this is a place where we are allowing ourselves to smoke, because marijuana smoking is a social activity.
I know, but my point is that I think it's been very good that it's been confined to the home, because it's basically prevented stoned driving, because you're home, right? Like, I mean, it seems like the reason why we don't hear stories about as many high car crashes as we do drunk car crashes is because it's restricted to the home.
Well, there's that, and also alcohol far out impairs,
absolutely,
far stronger than marijuana.
And also that alcohol is far more widely available than marijuana. But my point being is, you are for this social consumption in clubs and whatnot?
I'm for regulated social consumption. I mean, certainly we don't want people just driving around impaired, but we, at the same time, we want law enforcement to have the ability to recognize impairment rather than just use.
For some of these states looking to legalize it, or whether considering it even at all, I mean, what is the checklist? Do they need to connect with regulators before, for instance, the governor of Vermont signing this bill to make sure that that regulators, or that law enforcement authorities, right, the police department, whatever it may be, feel comfortable in handling these cases before they can move forward with actually signing the bill? What are the steps? What are the important things to these lawmakers?
Well, I think what's important clearly is revenue. I mean, I think that the taxes that they're making and the taxes that they're losing to surrounding states. If you look at a state like Vermont, you have Maine, you have Massachusetts, and you have Canada, all surrounding Vermont that are all going through the process of legalization. And so a legislator in Vermont is looking to also not have people leaving Vermont to purchase cannabis and returning, but actually have those sales be state-based. So there's that, and law enforcement is a concern. What's interesting to us about Vermont is it's the first time that the legislature has proposed this adult use law, which is great for us here in New York because we don't have that ability. Some states, you don't have the ability to have a referendum that voters vote on. And when the politicians are so far behind the voters, it's very difficult, but Vermont has shown that it can happen.
Danko, Senior Cultivation Editor at High Times, thank you so much for joining us. I want to do a markets check right here, and I also want to point out one other thing. You know, the VIX, the measure of volatility in the stock market, has been flat for years at this point, basically, or been at 2-year lows for some time. It's up 15% today. We've now seen the market go down to being a drop of 80 basis points at this point, and this is concern about the president. I mean, that's really the only thing that's causing this right now.
Biggest drop on the Dow, our producer's telling us, since March 21st. And so there you see it. It is a triple-digit loss. We haven't yet, I don't believe, crossed the 200-point loss, but we're getting closer there as we speak, moving farther away from Dow 21,000. When it comes to the VIX, the stories just a week or two ago, to John's point, was about how the VIX was at its lowest level in multiple decades, in 20 years or something. And so you do see it pick up here. I would say to watch on the VIX, and it is confusing based on its name, but this is basically a gauge of how the market is going to perform only 30 days out, right? So this is a bet in the futures market as to what is going to